Congratulations to all of you at KCAU-9 on your 70th anniversary. To our viewers and advertisers, thank you. Without your support, none of this would have been possible. To all of our employees, thank you for all that you do, both inside our building and out in the communities that we serve. For the past 70 years, KCAU-9 has provided the Siouxland viewers and advertisers with high-quality local news, weather, sports, and entertainment programming. Everyone at Nexstar is excited for what lies ahead. Congratulations again on your 70th anniversary.
From our station's earliest beginnings to today's modern world, this is 70 years of Siouxland Proud with Tim Seaman and Sophie Erber.
And hello, and thanks for joining us. I'm Tim Seaman.
And I'm Sophie Erber. For 70 years, Channel 9 TV has been serving Siouxland, providing news, weather, and other important information every day of the week.
And at the same time, serving as a community partner in good times and bad. Over the next half hour, we'll take a look back at the history of this TV station, as well as some of the biggest news events our reporters have covered over the last 7 decades.
We'll also be reconnecting with many of the reporters and anchors who you allowed into your home each night at 5, 6, and 10 p.m. Thanks for joining us for this special program.
Siouxland Proud for 70 years. And it all started in 1953. That's the same year the first color television sets and transistor radios went on the sale. The Coles Company made KVTV the first television station on the air in Sioux City. The station made its first home on Pierce Street.
KVTV, we're making a difference, Sioux City.
KVTV primarily was a CBS affiliate, but carried programming from all 4 networks. Unlike today, most production was live on air, from commercials to news broadcasts and special programming, all done with no second take. When a recording was needed, film captured the images, not videotape, or digital cards like those used today in the industry.
Just 3 years later, KVTV was on the move. The station relocated to 7th and Douglas Street downtown. KVTV was located at what until then was known as the Municipal Auditorium. Canyon Kids Corner was one of the first locally produced programs with some 70,000 guests taking part over its many years. And Jim Henry welcomed kids and parents to the studio each day for 32 years. From Brooklyn, New York, Henry moved to Sioux City after being stationed there during World War II, and he never left.
Jim Henry was a legend in Sioux City. You know, I think he was very well liked by many, many people.
Legend, entertainer, veteran. Just some of the words used to describe Jim Henry, host of the longest-running locally produced children's show in Sioux City. The program first aired 70 years ago on March 30th of 1953. The show was originally broadcast live and then during the mid-1960s switched to a taped format in black and white. And over the years, hundreds if not thousands of Siouxland children were part of the program. Nancy Bradley was one of those children invited to the studio.
You wrote in and requested to be on the show, and then you got a letter back saying that you were invited to be there. I was like 9 or 10 years old, you know, so looking around and cameras, and I'd never been on TV before, you know, I didn't know what to expect. But I remember when we left there, everybody was laughing and happy, and we talked about it on the way home in different cars, and, you know, I really do wish they had shows like that for kids today.
And not just because of the entertainment, but because of the values Nancy says Jim passed on.
And this one is drinking some booze. And it says, don't be a clown and drink.
Very good. Some very good advice. Okay.
We taught kids how to be friends, how to love each other, how to play. You know, they had story hour, they had cartoons. But I remember the puppet, the snake, his name was Sam. And Sam would reach into the mailbag.
So if you'll reach into the old mailbag, we'll get a good guy. Remember, all the good guys receive a gift from Sam, the old-timer, and myself.
And pull out letters, and then Jim would read the letters from the kids, you know, and just funny things that he did.
Most people who watched the show remember Jim's pin collection.
It started out as a hat, and he took those pins that kids would send in, and he put them on I think it was like a beret or a cowboy hat or whatever, And then pretty soon he had so many pins that he had to find a different way to display them. So he started pinning them on a vest. And pretty soon the vest was full.
Another participant, Rochelle Barnum, tells us long after she appeared on the program to read a review of her favorite show, Jim helped her teach her students.
Years later, decades later, I teach history, and I had my students have an interview day with World War II veterans, and we invited as many World War II veterans as we could think of and that we knew to my high school, West High at that time, and he came. He was one of the first to respond. I'll be there to share his experiences. It was the war that brought him to Sioux City, and he stayed, and he let the kids interview him, and he answered all their questions, and he volunteered all kinds of information. That's just the kind of person that he was. He really cared about people, and he liked to share with them and help them in any way that he could, and he really saw that that was a way to help young people out.
Competition from cable TV shows and changes at KCAU took Canyon Kid off the air in the mid-1980s. But over the years, countless Siouxland children enjoyed Jim Henry's many talents, and those we spoke with tell us they will never forget the caring and comical cowboy that he was both on and off the air.
It was a lot of fun, and it'll be a lot of fun next week. We hope that you will be around, and be kind to one another. Bye now. You want to wait?
Bye.
Bye.
See ya!
Jim also served as the station's promotions manager and worked here until 1985. Jim Henry passed away in 2014 at the age of 89. Just 4 years after going on air, KVTV had its second owner, People's Broadcasting Corporation, a subsidiary of Nationwide Insurance Company, and the first weather ball was erected atop the Badgerow building, where it stood for 16 years until a windstorm brought it down.
Another of the station's best-known personalities joined KVTV in 1959. Gene Sherman, also known as Coach, was hired as sports director, starting a 26-year career at the station. Sioux City was home to Gene, a Central High School, a University of Nebraska graduate. He was a pioneer in both radio and TV. Before his time at Channel 9, Gene worked at KMNS Radio in Sioux City, covering Sioux's baseball, along with other teams.
But eventually I went over to Channel 9, but I was not the sports director because Les was there. They had me doing a lot of things. I did some of the weather at times. I filled in for Jim Henry. I wore a Sioux City Sioux's baseball uniform. What did they call me? I can't remember.
Number 30. You went a 30. You had a number 30.
Number 30? Yeah. But I thought I had some sort of a nickname. Maybe Tom, can you remember Tom?
Dugout Gene.
Dugout Gene, that was it. Yeah, call me Dugout Gene.
Gene spent almost 40 years on TV. He died in 2000 at the age of 78. In 1965, and for the third time in a dozen years, KVTV was sold. This time, Wisconsin Valley Television, that was the purchaser. That same year, a broadcast tower was built near Hinton, where the station's tower remains today. Land at the former tower site was sold to the Sioux City School District and is now home to North High School. That tower, by the way, was gifted to South Dakota Educational Television.
Few remember the early days of TV in Sioux City better than George Lindblade. He spent more than 60 years behind the camera, including here at Channel 9. Through the 1950s and 1960s, the golden age of TV, George worked across several local media platforms. A photographer by trade, he served as creative director at the station. His work included documentaries, commercials, and of course, big news stories.
Well, the early days of TV were quite interesting because the early days of TV in Sioux City, there was no film and there was no video. What we used was Polaroid cameras. It all progressed into what we have today, but Channel 9 was the first to go out in the field with portable television, portable video. I think the one thing that people don't know is what KCAU stood for. And we all know what K is, and CAU cares about you. And Channel 9 did care about people. It was a requirement if you worked there, you would be involved with the community beyond the television station.
George went on to own his own production company, and he and his wife Lou Ann can be found today at Sioux City Gifts. That's on Pierce Street. And it wasn't until 1967 that KCAU-TV went on the air, operating then as Forward Communications. The station's call letters changed from KVTV to KCAU, and with it came a new station identity. Many will remember the Major 9 and the Major 9 Report. This was a time when color videotape was being introduced. Bill Turner served as the general manager. That was for about 20 years and was a community and business leader.
Among the biggest stories that KCAU reporters covered in the 60s was a strike by workers at what was then known as Iowa Beef Packers in Dakota City.
KCAU 9 News reporter Jason Toktagian recently sat down and talked with one worker who experienced that violent strike.
In 1969, IBP ran 8 Midwestern beef plants. That included a plant in Dakota City, the location of a major strike.
The strike usually lasted about a year, and it was about the time you'd get healed up from the last strike, they'd have another one.
Dan Monahan started working for IBP back in 1965. One of his positions included working on the slaughter line preparing cattle.
One of the hardest jobs I ever had. Getting that line and beef just keep coming, and one after the other, and you can't beat the chain. That chain, you get real coupled with your job, they speed the chain up. I think I took home about $59 a week.
The mixture of dangerous working conditions and low pay led to 1,200 union workers walking out of their jobs at the Dakota City slaughterhouse on August 24th, 1969. This sparked a series of violence in the area.
But I think it was like 7 to 10 guys, and they'd get in cars, and these guys would come out of there. Of course, we call it scab, we'd holler scab at them, and these Goose Squad guys would follow, beat some of them up, and destroy their property.
Scab was the name given to people who took the jobs of people protesting IBP.
Some things you don't forget when you're out there trying to better your life and better for your family, and somebody goes in there and takes your job. You just can't forget them kind of things. You just don't forget them.
The division between strikers and workers continued to be dangerous for a year.
You just had to learn to bite your lip, but you couldn't, you can't just go beat somebody up because they're trying to make a living too,
Before the strike ended on April 13th, 1970, there had been 1 death, 56 bombings, more than 20 shootings, numerous tire slashings, death threats, extensive property damage, and the bombing of an IBP vice president's home.
I don't know how strong the union is, but I know one thing, if it hadn't been for the union, they never would have gotten where they're at today.
In the final settlement, the union gained a salary increase of 20 cents an hour, but that didn't put an end to the strikes at IBP. However, future strikes weren't as violent as the one in '69. Jason Toktagian, KCAU 9 News.
The name Dave Nixon is synonymous with news coverage at KCAU, but that's not where his career started. It was in 1969 when Nixon first hit the TV airwaves here. Few would probably remember, though, that it was as a weatherman. It lasted only a couple of years, with Nixon moving to the news chair, replacing longtime anchor Charlie Harness. A Dakota City native, Nixon honed his skills in radio working in Minneapolis and locally at KMNS. At KCAU, he anchored the Major 9 Report, working alongside weatherman Leon Pedersen and sportsman Gene Sherman. The station rose to #1 in the market. Nixon moved to Des Moines in 1978 to anchor the newscast at WHO-TV. He later returned to Sioux City 2 years after that as news anchor at Channel 4.
Another name from Channel 9 that few would have known back in the 1970s but is now synonymous with Disney and animation is Ron Clements. The 1971 Bishop Heelan grad was just a teenager when he started at the station as a commercial artist. With help from co-workers at KCAU, Clements quickly moved to bigger things, joining Hanna-Barbera as a cartoon producer and eventually at Disney Animation Studios in Los Angeles. Clements was in Sioux City for the 2018 Sioux City International Film Festival, and news anchor Jenna Renstrom caught up with Ron.
Is there a memory that stands out that you could share with us?
Oh, gee, I had a great time working at Channel 9 in the art department. They're great people. There was a station manager, Bill Turner, who was a great mentor of mine. I just saw George Lindley today, sure. a great, very creative, wonderful photographer, artist, everything, and he was a big influence.
You're welcome.
Moana is one of the blockbuster animated movies Ron worked on at Disney. Others included The Little Mermaid and Aladdin. The late 1970s and early 1980s produced another wave of some of KCAU's most recognizable and popular personalities. In 1977, Lorenz, Iowa native and University of Iowa grad Greg Lund joined KCAU.
After working at KICD Radio at Spencer, Greg started as a reporter at the station. Just a year later, when Dave Nixon left, Greg took over for the first of two stints as 6 and 10 o'clock news anchor. Weatherman Tom Peterson also was a product of the 70s. His sense of humor and personality quickly caught on with viewers. After graduating from Central High School, Tom attended Briar Cliff and eventually served in Vietnam. Back home, Tom first worked on radio with the personality of Captain America. It was March of '77 when Pete, as friends called Tom, first hit the TV airwaves, letting it be known that he only reported the forecast. He didn't make it up. How he did that quickly became one of the most popular parts of the newscast. Over his roughly 17 years on the air, viewers provided more than 1,100 pointers used in nightly weathercasts. Tom also doubled as the longtime director of the Sioux City Community Theater. Here's Tom looking back.
The National Weather Service continues a winter storm warning through tonight. Snow expected to continue through tomorrow, ending tomorrow afternoon with total accumulations of 8 to 12 inches across parts of the area.
Tom tragically died in an auto accident in 1994. He was just 45. He was returning to Sioux City from Minnesota in a snowstorm at the time. Siouxlanders from all walks of life filled Epley Auditorium at Morningside College to pay their respects.
He was dedicated to Siouxland and Sioux City. He was just a terrific guy. You know, he would greet you by, "Hey, fun seeker, how's it going?" Because that's kind of his MO in life was to look for fun. But again, I'll reiterate, when it came time for severe weather, he was all seriousness and was in there 100%. But he was really fun to work with.
Greg Lund returned to KCAU in 1986 after leaving Sioux City for 2 years to work in Little Rock, Arkansas. Greg was at Channel 9 for what at the time was a major breakthrough for TV news, the advent of videotape.
That was a whole new area for us, that you could shoot something and 2 minutes later have it on the air. And so that was just amazing, you know, amazing technological breakthrough. And what has followed just makes that look like nothing.
Good evening. I'm Greg Lund. Here are some of the stories we'll have for you tonight at 10.
Channel 9 was really integral to the community. I mean, it was really tied into the community. The leader at that time was Bill Turner when I came to the station. And he made sure that we were involved in the community on almost everything we did. So it was a tremendous place to learn and a tremendous place to get experience. And I think probably still is.
Greg was a fixture until 1997 when he left the TV business, ultimately moving to San Diego, where he and his family reside today. Hiring on-air talent from right here in Siouxland has always been a focus at KCAU. In 1982, Ponca, Nebraska native Julie White joined Tom and Greg on the Major 9, first as a college intern and later as host of Good Morning Siouxland.
Julie White is a true Siouxlander, growing up in northeast Nebraska, staying close to home, attending Briar Cliff. Julie worked part-time at the station and later anchored both the morning and noon newscasts. Julie recently told us that she felt like she was a part of the entire Siouxland community while working at Channel 9.
You were getting the same information you're getting today, but I think people looked upon it as a family. You know, I had 3 babies while I was on the air, and I still today, people will stop and ask about my kids. The Siouxland community is really, they're attached to their TV family, I think is what you'd call it. We went out, we did live broadcasts from RAGBRAI, the Spencer County Fair. We rode horses in the Cherokee Rodeo Parade. I can remember one of the saleswomen and myself roped a calf in the Cherokee Rodeo. You got to do so many fun things. At the same time, covering news and learning something every day. I mean, you really did. One day I was at the courthouse and one day I was at the hospital, and it was fascinating.
Today, Julie and her family farm and own a veterinary clinic in Jackson, Nebraska.
By 1984, more big changes were coming to Channel 9. KCAU was sold in '84, the 4th time the station had new owners. This time, an investment group, Westray Capital Corporation, purchased the station from Forward.
It was a short-lived association because 1 year later, KCAU had its 5th owner, Citadel Communications, based in Bronxville, New York, took control. Technology changes like digital TV followed. But then General Manager Ray Cole says that's not what guided the station.
I've never thought, Tim, that the technology is what drove a station's success. You have to stay up on technology, but it still comes down to your ability to have people who care about the community, who want to serve the community. You know, we're charged by the Communications Act of 1935 to serve the public interest. And some stations do that better than others. And I think KCAU has a long established record of doing it quite well. But I don't look back at any other time in my career as being more rewarding and gratifying than the years that I spent at KCAU here in Sioux City.
Following the departure years earlier of sports director Gene Sherman, a handful of people filled the role of sports director. It was in 1988 that I arrived on the Siouxland scene. For the next 25 years, I reported on some of Iowa's best athletes as well as great people.
It was about 11 years ago, after then news anchor Larry Wentz became ill and required a transplant surgery, that Tim made the move from sports to news.
In 1989, Sioux City was thrust into the national spotlight after what continues to rank as the biggest news story covered by KCAU-9 reporters.
United Airlines Flight 232 was a regularly scheduled flight from Denver to Chicago, continuing to Philadelphia. After a mid-flight catastrophic failure of its tail-mounted engine, the flight crash-landed at Sioux Gateway Airport. All of Siouxland responded. Of the 296 passengers and crew on board, 112 died during that accident, while 184 people survived. For weeks, reporters from around the world came to Sioux City to cover this tragedy. Wreckage from the crash is now on display at Sioux City's Mid-America Museum of Aviation and Transportation. Family and friends of those on Flight 232 continue to visit Sioux City and the crash site all these years later.
When I started to see the signs, Sioux City, and all I could do was look in the sky and imagine an airplane circling. And that was extremely tough driving in. We just prayed that she was one of the people that was maybe in the hospital, because the news coverage showed that some people actually walked away.
Captain L. Haynes guided what was later dubbed the impossible landing, and for several days KCAU became home for ABC's Nightline program, with survivors and rescue workers sharing their stories with folks across the nation.
That's right, and KCAU's Weather Ball first appeared on the Sioux City landscape. That was back in 1957. A windstorm brought it down, though, years later, and after a more than 20-year absence, the Weather Ball returned to the skyline. That was in 1995. Settled along the banks of the Missouri River, flooding has long produced news headlines here.
From the Floyd River flood in '53 to the Big Sioux in '69, the Perry Creek flood in 1990, as well as the Missouri River flooding, millions of dollars has been spent over the last century repairing flood damage. KCAU reporters were there to help alert the public of the pending emergency situations and update the community as conditions changed.
They also shared the personal stories of devastation and neighborhood cleanup, as well as the process of rebuilding. And through it all, the community came together.
After 60 years of operations in small ownership groups, KCAU got its sixth owner in 2013. Citadel announced the sale of KCAU and two other stations to Nexstar Broadcasting. Today, Channel 9 is part of the largest TV company in America. Nexstar Media Group purchased the stations for a reported $88 million just 10 years ago. The company continues to grow today with stations in 116 markets, including LA and New York. The Nexstar family also includes WGN Chicago as well as the CW network.
The purchase by Nexstar also brought to a close KCAU's time at our 7th and Douglas studios. Long overdue for a major overhaul, our new owners went to work building a new state-of-the-art TV facility, now at 5993 Gordon Drive. And in 2017, for the first time since 1962, KCAU-9 originated from somewhere other than downtown Sioux City. We continue to enjoy this $2.5 million facility. Well, hundreds of professionals are part of the station's history, and while some are now out of the TV news business, many are still working in the industry.
Several reached out to us as we celebrate 70 years. See how many you can remember.
Who can forget the historic 2011 Missouri River flooding that kept our newsroom in Siouxland very busy, plus the tornadoes in Mapleton and Wayne, Nebraska.
I always say you all are some of the most friendly folks out there.
So many fond memories of Siouxland, now in Orlando, Florida. Hey guys, happy anniversary.
Those were some great times early in my career, running around Sioux City, trying to make sure that we were telling the news of the day and that we were doing a good job of it.
It was my very first job out of college, and I learned so much from so many wonderful people, many of whom I'm still in touch with.
Hi, I'm Lori Furlong. I was born and raised in Sioux City, Iowa. I worked at the Major 9 back in the 90s.
My favorite memory, and always a great memory, working with the great Tom Peterson, the best weather person in the history of Sioux City.
Sioux City and KCAU-9 has helped a lot of young journalists get their start, and for that I want to wish it a happy anniversary.
I loved my time in Siouxland. Bacon Creek Park, still one of my favorite places. All of the events you guys have there too. We made a lot of great memories as a family.
What a great place to start your career with some great people. I got to cover state champions in Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota, and invite so many teams and student athletes into studio for Champions Week.
KCAU and Sioux City hold such a special place in my heart because it's where I met my husband. I'm so thankful to have been a part of your past, your history, and I just want to say congratulations on 70 great years. You're still the one, KCAU.
Those were some really fun days. I had great coworkers. I met wonderful people out in the Siouxland community.
Hello from 2 KCAU alums now living in South Bend, Indiana.
Happy 70th anniversary, KCAU, and happy 35th birthday, Tim.
No. He's been at the station for 35 years.
He's not turning 35?
No.
Oh, wow. Tim, you look great.
KCAU will always hold a special place in my heart because it's the place that I ended my broadcasting career. And what a great way to end it. With such great friends.
The biggest memories are the big weather events. We had the Christmas blizzard of 2009, the Mapleton tornado of 2011, the Wayne tornado of 2013, and the Pilger tornado of 2014. I really enjoyed my time at KCAU and working with everybody there.
My time in Siouxland and at Channel 9 is so special to me that the mic flag that we used some 20 years ago still sits on my desk at work here today. Shh. Don't tell Tim Seaman that I took one on my way out. Happy anniversary, KCAU.
Indeed, some great people have worked here at KCAU in the newsroom over the last 70 years.
And as we move into our next decade of community service and bringing Siouxland the news, our pledge is the same: to embrace the community that we serve and strive for excellence in all of our endeavors.
You know, with the new company Nexstar Media taking over about 10 years ago, the big focus is on localism and community service projects, giving back. You know, every year Nexstar has a day of caring, for example. Every market that we're in, the staff volunteers and does work in the community. So that's a big part of what we do. And the other big thing is always serving the people here locally, providing news and weather, information when there's a disaster or severe weather coming in. We want to be the people who are out in front, giving people the information that they need to stay safe. Our slogan that we came up with about 10 years ago, our branding position is Siouxland Proud. And there's a lot that goes into that thinking, that we are proud to be here in Siouxland and we look forward to serving the people of Siouxland for many more years to come.
It has been a remarkable 70 years, and on behalf of the more than 60 people that we're lucky enough to call coworkers, thanks for watching.
And if you want to watch this special again, you can find it on our website. Of course, that is SiouxlandProud.com. Again, thank you for being with us today.
And here's to 70 more years.